Good evening and welcome to Candidates Night, hosted by the Plymouth Area League of Women Voters. I am attorney Alice Legue, and I shall be moderating this program. I am a member of the Plymouth Area League, but I do not live in Plymouth, and that is why I have agreed to moderate our forum this evening. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that is open to both men and women members. The League does not support individual candidates or political parties. Anyone interested in knowing more about the League is inclined to visit us at our website at www.plymouth.lwv.org. This candidates program is being recorded and will become available to the public soon afterwards on PAC TV and on our League's own YouTube channel. The access for the YouTube performance is found again on our website. Please check with the station and our website for viewing opportunities. A big thank you to Brian Byrne at EdTV for assisting our League to produce this presentation. And a reminder to our participants that any material from tonight's forum cannot be used in advertising or on candidates' websites. This year's Plymouth Spring Ballot includes a charter question that asks Plymouth voters about installing a charter commission of 9 members. If the vote to create a charter passes, then those candidates with the most votes will become commissioners. If the charter question fails, the votes for the commissioners are moot. Tonight's virtual forum features 17 of the 18 candidates running for 9 seats on the Charter Commission. There are a total of 7 questions that were submitted by our League membership and then screened and designed by our Voter Service Committee to be nonpartisan. The format for tonight's program is as follows. Questions 1 and 5 will be answered by all participants. In groups of 5 or 6, you will be called upon to answer either question number 2, number 3, or number 4. In groups of 9 and 8, you will be called upon to answer either question 6 or 7. All of your answers and remarks are limited to 30 seconds. The order of answering questions and closing remarks was determined prior to this evening in order to allow me to fill out the speaking grid, and it was discussed with the candidates before this program. The charter candidates present tonight are as follows. Mr. William Abbott, Mr. Wrestling Brewster, Mr. Alan Costello, Miss Betsy Hall, Mr. Michael Hamlin, Mr. Joseph Hutchison, Mr. Bill Cohane, Mr. David Malaguti, Mr. Francis Mand, Mr. Kevin O'Reilly, Mr. David Peck, Mr. Lawrence Pizer, Mr. Russell Shirley, Miss Sarah Sibley, Mr. Peter Svan, Mr. Matthew Tavares, and Mr. Scott Becky. The questions will be read by me, and unfortunately cannot be displayed on the screen. You each will have 30 seconds to answer the question as I call upon you. Your answers are not to include any rebuttals. And please keep your eye on the time clock on your screen, which is the purple one with the League of Women Voters on it. It will be on your screen. Without any further instructions, I think we are ready to begin. So we will begin with question 1, which everybody will answer. And we will begin with you, Mr. Vecchi. And the question is as follows. What expertise and experience with our community can you bring to the Charter Commission? Mr. Vecchi.
Thank you. I actually have a wide range of expertise that I can bring to our community during this. I was a member of the last Charter Review Committee that we just completed and submitted our recommendations to town meeting last year, along with several of the other candidates. In addition to that, I'm an attorney, admitted to practice in state, federal, and before the United States Supreme Court. And I've served our community in my capacity as a police officer for the last 29 years.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen. Unmute, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Bill Cohen. My experience has been operating as a town meeting member and operating as a chairman of a committee that's required to put in articles before town meeting. I have learned this process as you go through the selectmen and as you go through the FinCom. There's an enormous amount of work that takes place in our form of government after town meeting. And that's working with department heads, working with the town manager's office. And in that capacity, I've learned a
Thank
great
you. Mr. O'Reilly.
Thank you. I've been very active in the community over the years, including 15 years as a town meeting representative, as well as a member of the Committee of Precinct Chairs. I've served on the previous Charter Commission, one of the previous ones established by the town moderator. Many people in town know me as the former executive director and chair of the Plymouth Area Chamber of Commerce. I've also served in both state and federal government.
Thank you. Ms. Hall.
As a member of the town meeting for over 20 years and chairman of precinct 12 for over 5, I've had a lot of experience with the legislative process, but also as chairman of several committees in town, including the Open Space Committee. I believe that I have given a lot of service to the town in terms of the kinds of things that the Open Space Committee has done, as well as other committees that I've been chairman of.
Thank you. Mr. Shirley.
Thank you. I've got a lot of experience within the town and have contributed a lot to the community. I've been a town meeting member for over 20 years. I've been on the Advisory and Finance Committee. I'm currently sitting as the vice chair of the Plymouth Housing Authority. And I've done a lot of other things with the Plymouth Youth Soccer Association and several other items within the community. I've been an officer in the Massachusetts Army National Guard, and I look forward to serving on the Charter Commission.
Thank you. Mr. Brewster.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a chair of Precinct 5. I'm a member of the Harbor Committee. Been involved in local politics for a while. I've been on a couple of campaigns. Interesting that the biggest thing that I think that I bring to the table is I've been listening to people because I've had to go and talk to them to get signatures to start this.
Thank you very much. Ms. Sibley.
Yes, thank you. I served on the recent Charter Review Committee, 2017 to 2019, which included reviewing the charter and listening to community members. And that actually encouraged me to run for town meeting and become a town meeting member in Precinct 1. And I have also been serving on the No Place for Hate Committee in town since 2016, and I'm now the vice chair. So I've gotten the experience of going through a charter review process and engaging with different parts of our government.
Thank you. Mr. Tavares.
Yes, thank you. I am currently a vice chair for Precinct 2, but have served in another precinct as well and have seen what works and sometimes what doesn't work within our representative town government. I've also done numerous volunteer activities throughout the town, including the July 4th committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swan.
Hi, I have been serving in town meeting in Plymouth for 6 years. I have served other communities' town meetings and finance committees for over 12 years. I have extensive experience with municipal finance. I have written papers on our sewer issue and other issues. I convinced our town finance director to put the bond issue official statements up on the town website. So I've been quite active and I've been a lender to many municipalities throughout the Commonwealth and elsewhere.
Thank you. Mr. Mand.
I've been involved in many civic groups and nonprofits in the town, but probably I have the broadest experience of all the members here in that I was a journalist covering every different type of committee and board for at least a dozen years here and in many other communities. So I've been to many planning board meetings, many finance committee meetings, many select board meetings. I've gone to the smallest committees and the largest because I have a definite and specific interest in the way our government functions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hanlon?
Thank you. In Plymouth government, I served on the Advisory and Finance Committee for 6 years. I've been a town meeting member for 6 years. I've been a chair of Precinct 15 for that 6-year period. I also served, as others have, on a Charter Review Committee. That was probably 7 or 8 years ago when I was on the Finance Committee. I've also served on the Roads Advisory Committee, and interestingly,
Thank
on
you.
the Conflict of Interest
Thank you.
Subcommittee.
Mr. Pfizer?
I was the town clerk of Plymouth for 28 years, so that I have been part of the town government. In addition to that, I have reported to every charter commission and committee that has been in existence in Plymouth. I have studied the charter. I was responsible for keeping the charter as the town clerk. Also, I've been a history major and I've had political science courses.
Thank you. Mr. Costello?
Yes, thank you. I've been a resident for over 40 years. For the last nearly 8 years, I've been a town meeting member. For the vast majority of that time, I was the precinct chair representing precinct 10. I was the chairman of the committee of precinct chairs for 2 years. I was very instrumental with the group to form this question and get it on the ballot. I also privately have a telecommunications company, $2 million a year, so I have some business experience. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Abbott?
Hi, I've been a 40-year fan of local government. I was chair of the Charter Commission 20 years ago that basically wrote the current charter that we have. Served on charter review committees, was the first chair of the committee of precinct chairs. Was chair of precinct 12, was a town meeting member most of this time. And basically I love local government. I've been very much trying to make it better. Every time we get involved with one of these reviews, it ends up better. And I look forward to this process this time.
Thank you. We will now move on to question 2.
Hey, you missed me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And you missed me too.
Yeah.
3, 4, 5.
And me too.
I'm sorry, who did I miss?
Me, but I'll take Frank's answer.
Mr. Hutchison, I'm sorry. I thought I talked to you after I called on you. I checked you off after Mr. Shirley. I'm sorry, it was a little premature.
You forgot Dave Malaguti.
And Mr.
And David
Malaguti.
Peck. And David Peck.
And David Peck. Well, I was way ahead of myself. My apologies to all of you, and hopefully this won't happen again. All right, Mr. Hutchison, please.
I have been a member of town meeting in precinct 12. I bring experience on a planning board, community preservation committee. I was the chair of a master plan steering committee, and I was the lead on an analysis of a town charter for the League of Women Voters. And I believe in the ideals of direct democracy and local self-government inherent in the New England town meeting.
Thank you very much. Mr. Malaguti.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Born here in Plymouth 73 years ago. My experience is 3 years on the Finance Committee, 1.5 years as chairman, 22 years on the Board of Selectmen, 2 years as chairman, and many, 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 many committees and commissions and search committees, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. And Mr. Peck.
Thank you, David Peck. I'm the vice chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals since 2005, chairman of the Building Committee also since 2005. I also was a member of the Charter Review Committee 2017 through 2019 and am a town meeting member from Precinct 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will begin with, go to question number 2, which will involve 6 of you. Question number 2, what aspect of Plymouth's government do you think is or is not working in the town's best interest? And we will begin with you, Mr. Pizer. Mr. Pizer, you need to unmute.
Okay. I think that Plymouth town government is actually working quite well. The parts that might need some attention, the supervision of the executive. I believe in participation, and sometimes there's a problem there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Costello.
Having been a town meeting member for 8 years, I enjoy town meeting. However, the aspect that I believe does not work for the citizen and the taxpayer is it's inefficient. We spend far too much money to do the projects that need to be done. There's a time lapse that the town meeting builds into a project that always costs the taxpayer far more money than it should. So although it's a great New England government, it doesn't work. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peck.
The major thing in my mind is the timing of decision-making. By town meeting only twice a year, it defers decisions for 6 months, sometimes more. And inflation runs anywhere from 3 to 5% per year, meaning decisions delayed ends up costing 3 to 5% each year. So more frequent meetings are required. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Abbott? You need to unmute, Mr. Abbott.
I'm very much a fan of the caucuses of town meeting members, which is unique here in Plymouth, where the town meeting members get together prior to a town meeting. And then they're also organized, they're leaders at the precinct chair level. And I think this amount of legislative organization makes the Plymouth town meeting function as a true legislature representing the people.
Thank you. Mr. Vecchi?
I think one of the things the pandemic has shown us is that town meeting needs to be more responsive. The fact that we weren't able to have our town meeting because we were unable to deal with the pandemic's issues, we need to address that in a manner that lets town meeting be more streamlined and more responsive and meet more frequently. Thank you.
And Mr. Cohen? Unmute, please.
One of my greatest concerns is how the town meeting members are educated on the budget. I would change how our finance committee operates and how that budget's built to control taxes here in Plymouth. We need to have a town meeting that's more in tuned on the budgetary questions. So I would be focused on the financial side of the equation of the town meeting form of government.
Thank you. And now we will move to question number 3. And there will be 5 of you who will be answering question number 3. Question number 3. How have you determined that our government is or isn't working well? And we'll begin with you, Mr. O'Reilly.
Thank you. I feel that those who are involved in town meeting are doing their best to make it work well, but that the structure that they're working within is both inefficient and does not have enough accountability. So my belief is that we need to look at a structure that will handle both of those, efficiency and accountability, and the timeliness of decisions in the town of Plymouth. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hall? Unmute, please.
Well, I think one of the great things about our system is that people do not have to spend 100, 200, 300,000 to be elected. All of our volunteers are willing to put forth a tremendous effort, and they do act as selectmen quickly and meet weekly, and then town meeting meets twice a year to handle things like the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Shirley?
Overall, I think the town is working well. And I think the town government is working well. I think one of the determining factors is we have one of the best financial ratings in the state. And that's thankfully to the management of our financial thing. I know that people are concerned about taxes, but I don't see this charter commission as being really an effective tool to correct that, but it may correct how the taxes are determined. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchison. Mr. Hutchison, please unmute.
I agree with Mr. Shirley about the financial rating of the town. I also think that the town meeting runs especially well because it allows us to have the voice of 135 town meeting representatives and represents a democratic model that is unique in the nation.
Thank you. Mr. Brewster.
Yes, the way I've determined it is in actually getting the signatures to get this on the ballot and speaking to the general public. They're concerned about transparency, efficiency, and accountability. Being a member of town meeting, it's frustrating to find out that things have not gotten done, and there's, oh, come on. Are you kidding me?
Thank you. All right, question. Question number 4. I'm sorry, with all these question number 4. How should the commission seek community involvement in developing a charter plan? And we will begin with you, Ms. Sibley.
I think the commission should seek community involvement by having hearings and being able to invite different community members into or onto Zoom perhaps to be able to have conversations and learn about different issues that they might be facing and think need to be tweaked, need to be improved, or ideas they may have. I also think it would be useful to talk to towns that have changed their form of government and towns that have chosen not to change their form of government and to learn from them.
Thank you. Mr. Tavares.
Yes, I'd echo Sarah's comments as well. We have always had charter review committees and charter commissions that have been open meetings. They're always open meetings where we have public comment, and we really need to seriously listen to every person's input, which is what actually makes our government work so well as it does, as well as invite other areas that have different forms of government to speak to us.
Thank you. Mr. Spahn.
I think the approach is to follow the path of those who've gone down this road before, learn from them as to what significant choices they made, and then present those to the public through various forums and presentations to then get feedback as to what they think is most appropriate. So I think we can learn a lot from others. After all, there are 35 communities smaller than Plymouth that have changed to a city council form of government.
Thank you. Mr. Malaguti.
I think the most important thing as a charter commissioner is to listen. I echo what everyone has said before us. I think the most important thing about our present form of government is the participatory nature of it. And I would be looking to improve that, but I would be open to all suggestions. But our most important thing is to listen, listen, listen.
Thank you. Mr. Mand.
I think I would push this process forward and make it more involving, almost a master planning process. We need to have all the neighborhoods represented, all the communities represented, the different constituencies, because this process just can't be a sounding board for what the specific interests of the people elected to this commission are. It really has to represent what people want. And I think our biggest fault as a government has been lack of transparency, not enough participation. So thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Hanlon.
This is the most important issue, I think, and that is to listen to the citizens of Plymouth. And that starts with a series of public hearings where people can come in and tell us what they like, what they don't like about town government. But realizing that people may be a little reluctant to come to night meetings and speak publicly and things like that, we might want to think about doing a town-wide survey of some sort that people could respond to, but we need to get feedback from the public.
Thank you. And now we will move to question 5, which all of you will answer. Question number 5. Do you favor a change in our current governmental structure? If yes, how would the change better serve the needs of Plymouth? If no, why do you think our current structure serves us well? And we will begin with you, Mr. Peck.
Thank you. I would change our form of government. I believe it needs to meet more frequently and with a smaller but still representative number of people. I favor a council form of government, directly represented of the entire town. And I would like that council to meet every other week, as many other council forms, to be able to make decisions in a timely, transparent way, as opposed to
Thank you.
across.
Thank you, Mr. Peck.
Twice a year. Thank you.
Mr. Abbott.
Although I favor the town meeting form of government, I think it can still be improved and some substantial changes can be made to that form of government. For example, selectmen could be elected by district in the town and not all tend to live in the same part of town. So there's always change out there. Every time we've looked at it, we've made substantial changes. But I would not abolish the town meeting. It's already one of the smallest town meetings in the state. And I think the town meeting itself is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vecchi.
Yes, I do believe we need some changes. As my fellow members of the last charter committee, we sat, we listened, we invited everyone in and gave their opinions on what we could do to make our government a better and more efficient government. One of those was to meet more often, meet more frequently, and to streamline town meeting. I am not adverse to further change, but I have no real opinion. I want to do as an elected official everybody else's.
Thank you. Mr. Kahane?
I favor this form of government. I believe the town meeting form of government must modernize for the 21st century. So I think that there needs to be substantial change to this form of government, but a highly representative form of government has served this community for over 400 years. And I think there's different things that we can do to reach out to residents, to organizations, and specifically start talking to the institution itself, the town itself and the different departments to see their input. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Reilly?
Thank you. Yes, I do believe there needs to be a change. And I go back to those same words I used before, which are transparency, efficiency, and accountability. I believe in our current form of government, most people could not tell you who their 9 town meeting representatives are. And I also have a problem with the lack of conflict of interest that has real teeth in it for town meeting members. So yes, I would change town government.
Thank you. Ms. Hall?
Yes, I think that our town meeting and selectmen form of government has done a great job. If you look around Plymouth, I talk to people from Red Brook and Pine Hills, they love it here. And this is the town that has been created by our town meeting and our selectmen. Can it be improved? Absolutely. I would like to have the opportunity to help improve it. Having worked in a mayor form of government, and so has my husband, we have seen that has many flaws as well. We think we like what we have now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shirley?
Yes, the existing form of government is working fairly well, but it needs some improvement. I'd like to see it meet more than it does right now. Maybe the advisory and finance committee should just be looking at financial articles, and the precinct chairs should be looking at the other articles on the committee to possibly get to some town meeting 3 times a year. Beyond that, I'm going into this with an open mind. I'm willing to listen to the citizens of Plymouth and act on what they want for a government. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchison?
I believe that the current form of government works very well and is uniquely suited to Plymouth's low population density of 630 people per square mile. And that's important because it has allowed us to maintain the feel and sensibility of our small villages. Consider Tiltonville and Manomet and not Ellisville and Cedarville, several other villages, a small town center with shopping, restaurants, and our waterfront.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchison. You must stop. Thank you. Mr. Brewster?
Yes, I think we need to look at the form of government. I think Plymouth deserves the best form of government that is, transparent, efficient, and accountable. And I think that one of the things we need to do is we need to look at the fact that we can't get enough people to run for town meeting. We've got 10% of the population voting. That means to me that what we have needs to be tweaked. I've had some interesting conversations about, the precinct chairs having a little more responsibility.
Thank you. Ms. Sibley?
Thank you. I think it's premature for me to say either way, as I just got done saying I would be wanting to listen to our community members. So I do think we can make changes and tweaks to improve what we have, and I'm open to hearing those ideas. I know we also had ideas from the recent Charter Review Commission and their Charter Review Committee, and there could be ideas from that we could consider. But again, I'm open to hearing from our community members about how to increase efficiency and transparency and keep it an accessible government.
Thank you. Mr. Tavares?
Thanks. I believe in the representative government that we have, because we have a voice for all of the people, no matter the background. They're your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. However, as many people have said here, the accountability and streamlining of our representative government within its boards could actually happen. In particular, I look at something along the lines of the executive branch, which has the planning board, and there needs to be some oversight there as well.
Thank you. Mr. Swan?
Yes, I favor a change in government to a council form that meets frequently. I believe our town meeting does not serve our interests very well. All of the faces on the screen are active in government and understand it, but the vast majority of people have no interest and don't serve. In fact, 7 out of almost half of our 15 precincts cannot even get 3 candidates to run for town meeting. So it's dominated by a few people who know the process, but we definitely need a change for more accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Malaguti?
Thank you. I will listen to all ideas, but I favor our present form of government. I think it's the most representative that you could possibly have. And I believe there are strength in numbers. Take zoning issues for one example. It's a lot easier to influence 10 out of 15 councilors, that being a 2/3 majority, than it is to influence 2/3 of 100+ town meeting members. I would greatly like to see our present system tweaked, but I want to keep our present system.
Thank you. Mr. Mand?
I've been hearing a lot of people saying that one argument for changing our government is that people don't understand it, people don't participate in. Well, I think that's our responsibility. I've always said that we do a very poor job of tooting our own horn. This is a wonderful form of government with great participation potential, but any form of government requires education of the population, encouragement to participate. I think we have something great to sell, and we should start selling it.
Thank you. Mr. Hanlon?
Thank you. I am in favor of change. I think town meeting has lost its way. In a rush to get through the warrant in one day, we have lost the ability to discuss and debate. We have presentation forums that very few people attend. We have precinct caucuses that should not be a replacement for effective discussion and debate at town meeting. These things need to change. We can do better, and we must if we are to
Thank you.
regain the trust
Thank
of
you,
our
Mr.
citizens.
Hanlon. You must stop. Mr. Pfizer.
By and large, I think that our form of government does Plymouth proud. Participatory government is the best. The more we can get people to take part in their own government, the better we are. Also, we have a lack of corruption, by and large, in the town of Plymouth. I think that the difficulty of corrupting the number of town meeting members is notable.
Thank you. Mr. Costello.
Yes, thank you. I'd certainly be in favor of change. And if I were lucky enough to be seated on this committee, I would keep an open mind. The change might be to our present form of government, but we really owe the taxpayer and the resident at least a discussion on all the different forms available so that we can put the best option forward. And they could vote on it and go forward. They'd have the best scenario for their family. Some change has to be instituted to take care of this lack of efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will move to question number 6, which 9 of you will be answering. What is the criteria that you believe that the Charter Commission should develop when making decisions about the future of our town? And beginning with you, Mr. Costello.
I guess the criteria would be that it speaks to residents, town leaders from other towns, and we put together the very best set of circumstances that this town, with its 63,000 people and $250 million budget, can go forward for the very best for the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Peck.
I'd have two principal ones. Actually, I'd build on all these colleagues on our gallery view, our Hollywood Squares, that you need to listen to individuals. I would listen to every single committee, every volunteer committee, of which there's 50 or 60 different committees, listen to them. I would listen to the other towns and cities that have made the change and those have not made the change. So the two things: listen internally, listen externally. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott.
I would think the criteria would be that it would be free of conflicts of interest, free of cronyism, accountable, checks and balances, and most important, make the citizenry feel as though they're part of the local government and they just don't sign off on it and figure it can run itself. And this is the beauty of Plymouth, of course, is that so many people are participating in the form of government. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vecchi.
I believe that all of the decisions made by this commission should be in the best interests of the town and all the citizenry. We must free of bias or preconceived notions. We must act pure of heart and in what's the best interest of all of the citizens, not just the loudest ones or not the most vocal, but what is best for all of our town.
Thank you. Mr. Kahane?
I'd be looking at checks and balances as they relate to the different sections of our charter in terms of the executive branch, town meeting, looking at how those can be more efficient, listening to the voices of town employees in different departments and residents on what they see is functioning at a high level and what needs improvement. But I think that criteria would be one of the most important thing is finding some checks and balances to the system.
Thank you. Mr. O'Reilly.
I would echo what everybody has said in terms of developing criteria. Citizen participation is paramount, as well as gathering as much information both within the town and outside the town as we can. But in the end, the most important thing is developing any change that comes up out of this commission has the support of the voters of Plymouth.
Thank you. Ms. Hall?
Yes, I think that everyone has been really eloquent with their criteria. I agree with what people have said, certainly listening, certainly citizens' participation. Our charter says that this whole homeroom charter is for the general good of the town. And I think one of the things we need to take into account is people all the way down to Buzzards Bay, up to North Plymouth and out to West Plymouth. So many different needs, and they all need to be taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shirley?
Yeah, I think accessibility is important. Listening to the people that elect us in the committee. This group of people that's sitting at this meeting right now is distinguished, and I'd be honored to serve with any one of them. They're all intelligent. They all care about the town, and I look forward, hopefully, to working with the group that gets elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchison?
I would try to develop a rating system actually for the services that the town provides. For example, safety services, local sources of revenue, for example, tourism, our seacoast security, and basically try to measure
Thank you.
as well as I
Thank you, Mr.
could.
Hutchison. We have to stop. We will now move on to question 7, which 8 of you will be answering. And question number 7 is, in what ways can we build more oversight and transparency into our current form of government? And we will begin with you, Mr. Brewster.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing, that how we can build on what we've got. And that's what people are asking for. And I think the best way to do that is we have to meet more often, and we need to be more efficient. And we need to show the people of Plymouth that we're doing the government of the town, and we're doing what they ask us to do. More involvement from the people is important, but I think that we need to show them that we're doing the best we can.
Thank you. Ms. Sibley?
Thank you. I think we could do some things like increasing the number of times town meeting meets a year. Yes, like has been said multiple times. Perhaps increasing the number of board members on the select board, perhaps creating requirements to be appointed to FinCom, and perhaps term limits. I think there are a lot of different tweaks that we could make across our different branches of government. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tavares?
Yes, I think that we need to start thinking seriously about how to streamline a lot of these committees and get their responsiveness as far as overall time frame and getting back to our citizens. It's really about the community and how they interact with us. And a big part of what we need to do, even as a charter commission, would be to reach out and get community involvement to help us know how to streamline things and things that they see on their day-to-day interaction with local government.
Thank you. Mr. Swan?
Thank you. I think communication is the key. We need to create more accountability and accessibility. I frankly think our town manager has done a good job as she stepped up with her weekly reports and publishing them and questions. We need to have the precinct chairs and the finance committee to do a similar thing, to have weekly conversations, to present ideas and issues to the public, to get them engaged and to do something useful so the public feels interested. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Malaguti?
Well, I can go back to a period of time in the 80s when I first got on the board, when the meetings of the Board of Selectmen weren't even televised. So I think every year that goes by, more and more transparency is becoming apparent. I don't know what more we can do because you can just feed so much information to the people. It's up to them to, partake of it. I think we're fairly transparent, but if there are ways to improve on that, I'm all ears.
Thank you. Mr. Mand?
I agree. We're in the information age and we don't do a real good job of making the governmental process transparent or educating people about the process. So I would do as many of those kinds of things as possible to educate people, to get them involved. I remember reading a study from Korea, South Korea, where they're constantly surveying the people, and whether or not it has an effect on government, those people feel they're engaged. And we really need to do that in order to have people believe in our form of government, whatever it is.
Thank you. Mr. Hanlon?
Accountability and transparency are critical, and many people have already commented on that. I want to get to the checks and balances question, because I don't think this form of government has an effective means of checks and balances between the executive and the legislative branch. And that will be a critical issue that needs to be addressed by the Charter Commission.
Thank you. And Mr. Pizer?
I think we're doing a pretty good job so far with transparency. I think the best thing we can do is to encourage people to ask the town to send them information. The idea of the town manager's report, which I do, well, town meeting members receive, is a good one. But all of the committees in town and boards should make that available to the public.
Thank you. And now we are at the part of the program where you all will be making your closing remarks. You will have 30 seconds to do so, and you may include a rebuttal if you so choose. And we will begin our closing arguments with Mr. Kahane.
I think the most important thing that we need to do is modernize this form of government for the 21st century. Town meeting has served this community well, but we need checks and balances when it becomes between the executive branch in town meeting. And I do believe that town meeting members need to become more proficient on the budget they'll be voting on to control spending and taxes. But we also have to protect the greatest attributes of Plymouth. There's a great deal at stake with Plymouth, with 50% of Plymouth left undeveloped. Town meeting is a perfect mechanism for protecting our natural.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. All right, and Mr. O'Reilly, you are next.
First, I'd like to thank the League for the opportunity to explain why I'd like to receive one of the 9 votes for the commission. As someone who's been active in the community, including serving on town meeting, I believe I can bring my experience and be a valuable part of the commission. I have no preconceived notions about what the best form of government is for Plymouth, other than what we have now needs improvement. And I pledge to work with all the commissioners to come up with the best plan for our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hall?
I moved to Plymouth in 1978 because it was such a beautiful town. It had a great education system for my children, and it had a wonderful form of government that I had faith in. And so I did not become involved in town meeting and other forms of government until I had retired. But for the last 20 years, I've been privileged to serve our town as a town meeting member and in many other forms. And I look forward to the possibility of serving on this commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shirley?
As a Charter Commission commissioner, I will advocate for common sense, accessible and responsive government for the citizens of Plymouth. I will listen to all options and advocate for all who live in the community. We need your participation to make our municipal government better, and I encourage you to participate and take an active role by voting in the municipal election. My name is Russ Shirley, and I ask for your support and vote on May 15th.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchison?
I am running for Charter Commissioner because I believe in the ideals of direct democracy and local self-government of the New England Town Meeting. And as I mentioned earlier, I want to apply my experience on planning board, community preservation committee, chair of a master plan committee, and analysis of a town charter. And I want to be able to contribute to refining our current form of town meeting and improving it for performance over the next decades.
Thank you. Mr. Brewster?
Yes, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. I want to have the conversation. I want to be part of the conversation because I think all of us here can agree that town meeting, the current form of government we have, could be tweaked and should be tweaked. The greatest thing about this is that the commission brings it back to the voter. And that's the discussion I've had with the townspeople, is that they're excited to have a vote on this, that we can bring a form of government and have the conversation and bring it back to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sibley?
I respectfully ask voters for their vote onto the Charter Commission. I was appointed to the recent Charter Review Committee with an open mind as to what would be the best thing for Plymouth as a community across its diverse parts, in a community that I treasure. I greatly enjoyed the process of listening to various community members, and I would like the opportunity to do that again as a representative of the upcoming generations. There is much future impact to consider from making changes or from not making changes to our charter. And thank you to the League for this forum and to the other candidates for your commitment.
Thank you. Mr. Tavares?
Yes. Thank you to the League for holding this event tonight. I know our town is growing, but we must not lose sight of what has made our government successful through many a growth spurt: our ability to look at our governance, refine it, and manage to keep the voice of Plymouthans strong within our representative town meeting. I respectfully ask for your vote. Let's work together to allow all of us in our community to be represented and heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swan?
7,000 voters signed petitions to get this question on the ballot. It's apparent listening here that many on this panel want to keep the status quo or some version of it. Many of them have served on prior charter committees and commissions, and yet little has changed. The sad fact is that the amount of money we need to raise through taxes has increased at 4 times our population. Yet at the same time, our industrial tax base has declined by 8%. Please vote for change.
Thank you. Mr. Malaguti?
Thank you to the League for sponsoring this forum. As far as my candidacy goes, I have a lot of experience in town government. It spans many years. If you feel that that's beneficial in this process, please give me one of your 9 votes.
Thank you. Mr. Mand?
I think you're being sold on less of a say in local government, less of a chance to have your voice heard. I think you're being asked to believe that less is more. My name is Frank Mann, and I say you should actually have more of a say in what government does, more volume when you have a complaint, more opportunity to participate. That's why I'm running for Charter Commission. My name is Frank Mann. I want you to have more, not less.
Thank you. Mr. Hanlon?
In recent years, many towns in Massachusetts have changed their form of government to a town council or a city council. These changes did not end in chaos and corruption, as some would suggest, but have in fact significantly improved the effectiveness and efficiency of their governments. We can do the same in Plymouth. We need to have a conversation about what works and what doesn't work. This is an opportunity for the citizens of Plymouth to take control of their government by voting yes.
Thank you. Mr. Pizer?
I believe that we need an efficient, cost-effective, responsive government. I think we have that. I believe that people need to believe that they can enjoy their neighborhood and enjoy the town. And in order to do that, they have to have the ability to communicate with their government. This is the government that we have. I hope this is a government that will continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Costello?
Yes, I'd like to thank the League as well. I'd like to thank the other candidates. I want to take some time to advocate for the question. On May 15th, I would urge the resident taxpayer to vote yes for the Charter Commission. I think it's in their best interest that this conversation takes place and the best recommendation comes out of it for a form of government that's great for their lives in Plymouth. Vote for Alan Costello, May 15th. I appreciate all of your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Peck?
Plymouth has been growing at 1,000 people per year. We're now at anywhere from 63 to 64,000. Town meeting under current form would grow from 135 members to potentially over 150. I believe we need to reimagine town meeting to have it meet more frequently, smaller, And that could be a reimagined town meeting and could be a town council form of government. David Peck, vote on May 15th. Thank you very much.
Mr. Abbott.
I think we all agreed here tonight on the adjectives that should apply to this, to the government. It should be open, democratic, and no conflicts of interest. But, you know, we've tracked the communities that have switched from town meeting to city. And there are so many disappointed citizens in those various towns. They're sad. They're no longer part of their government. There are no more volunteers. Their taxes have not gone down. They're at least the same, or they've gone up. There's been no panacea.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abbott.
Bathwater.
Thank you. Mr. Vecchi.
Thank you for having us, and I feel honored to be among a great group of candidates. As a person who was born and raised in Plymouth, currently elected as a commissioner on the Redevelopment Authority and appointed to the Historic District Commission, as a retired gunnery sergeant of Marines, an attorney, as well as having served our community for many years in my occupation as a police officer, I feel that I can bring my unbiased skills to do what's best for the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Charter Commission candidates, for participating in this forum and for in the political process in our town. Your voice will help voters understand the issues before them on Election Day, May 15th. And to our viewers, please vote on May 15th or even earlier by mail-in ballot. Again, thank you very much and good night.